serve you as one of your district court judges if you live in Charlotte or in Mecklenburg County. The panelists that are with us right now are Judy Beall. Thank you for being here. And Laida Alarcon, thank you also for being here. And tell me if I mispronounce your name so that I don't mispronounce it all morning.
My name is Laida, everyone.
It's Laida?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you want to be called by your first or last name?
My first name is fine.
It's fine, okay. All right, I see we've got a couple parents on the line. Thank you for being here. And we will go ahead and get started. I'm going to give each panel an opportunity to go ahead and introduce themselves. Judy Beall.
Sure, I can go first. So hi, my name is Judy Beall. I am originally from Las Cruces, New Mexico. I went to law school and undergrad at the University of Southern California. Go Trojans, even though we lost to the Spartans yesterday in the tournament. I work at Bank of America, where I am an attorney, and I run the electronic discovery group there. We sit in litigation, and for those of you who think that you don't know what electronic discovery is, you actually do. Every time you see in the news someone whose email or chat or maybe voice recordings has been made public and turned over as part of a lawsuit, right now, I think Fox News people are in trouble for that. You hear about former president in trouble for that, former presidential candidates in trouble for that. That is what I do. I am one of those people who has to get all of that information for Bank of America.
Thank you very much, Judy. Laida?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Laida Alarcon. I work with Judy at Bank of America. I am originally from Ecuador, but have been in Charlotte for a very, very long time. And I went to UNC Chapel Hill for both undergrad and for law school. And I am new-ish to the legal profession. I graduated in 2021, so have a lot of that fresh perspective, especially with the virtual law school experience that I underwent. But I'm very happy to be here and very happy to talk to all of you today.
Thank you. Judge Marvel, we are doing brief introductions for each of the panelists, so whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Yeah, sorry for the delay. Zoom did not want me in, so I got kicked out and had to go talk to the help desk for a little while. But yeah, so I'm a district court judge in Mecklenburg County working in juvenile court. I was in family court for a few years before that. Prior to that, I was an adjunct professor and a Mecklenburg County public defender. But I went to law school at the University of Cincinnati. And prior to that, I went to Florida State University. So I have a large public school experience and happy to talk about that experience and help in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And so what I'm going to do is go through the questions one by one, and I'll ask just one person to answer. Panelists, if you feel strongly like you want to go ahead and chime in, you've got something that you want to offer, go ahead and do so. But so that we can get through all of the questions by 10:45, I'll just pose one question and we'll move forward. All right, so the first one is, what might impact a high school student's route to law school? Judy, would you take that one?
So I was actually going to suggest maybe Laida might want to take that one since she's the most recent law school grad among us.
Great idea. Laida?
Yeah, I have to say, I don't think there's one thing in particularly that may impact a law school or a high school student's path to get into law school. I personally think law school, we have students that come from many walks of life. You know, they went to different kinds of high school, different kinds of college. I would say grades are important to get to a good school, a good college. But I think what you do in college tends to be more heavily emphasized in law school applications. I think it's just a matter of just telling our kids, just enjoy being in school. I know it's hard for them at that age to really get the joy out of it, but just make sure you learn what you can, get good grades, do get involved in any kind of activity you may have in high school, whether it's a social club, academic club. I think that may help shape their path into a college and eventually into law school. I think it's also allowing them to explore their legal interests from early on. I think that's beneficial. So I know there's a few, or there might be a few internships or any other kind of legal programs where they could have a little bit of experience and, you know, try to figure out and really know for sure whether law school is something that they would want to do down the road. I don't think there's a lot of need to put too much pressure for high school students. I think they should be able to explore their interests. But I think just making sure that they learn what they can, get those good grades, and then figure out what they want to do in college. I think that's very, very helpful for them if they want to pursue the legal field down the road.
Thank you. What might impact an early undergrad student decision to attend law school?
So I will take that one. For me, I had not thought about going to law school until I was in undergrad, and I was a journalism and history major undergrad, and I started thinking about law school because I took a class on mass media law and First Amendment law when I was in undergrad. And I think that was common with a lot of people that I went to law school with. They took a class in undergrad that was law and something, and that sort of started sparking their interest in maybe I do want to go to law school.
Thank you. Besides GPA, are there other things law school students should look at for admission? For example, how important are grades compared to LSAT scores?
Can I just add something?
Yes.
That is not a part of the question. So I'm just the chat moderator, but I served as a panelist when I first joined Charlotte. And I'd say something that you want your students to focus on that a lot of people may not talk about is forming relationships and identifying mentors. So get close relationships with your high school teachers and your undergraduate professors, because those individuals will be serving as letters of recommendations for your students, whether it be for law school or for them to get a job later on. So they want to make sure, you know, they call it teacher's pet, but absolutely be a teacher's pet so that that teacher can provide you with a letter of recommendation later on for your law school's admissions application or even for a job once you get to law school.
Thank you, Iman. That's such a great point. Anyone else want to add or answer the other question?
Yeah, I'll add something, you know, just to kind of piggyback on that. And I agree entirely on those relationships and mentorships. But, you know, when you're applying, you know, like from my perspective, like I went to a big high school and a big college, like there are a lot of, you know, undergrads from Florida State with a 3.5 to 4.0 GPA applying to law school. But those other experiences, whether it's from a mentorship, from having a great letter of recommendation, or, you know, having different experiences in college, you know, whether that's through volunteering, through social justice work, or working with nonprofits, like those kind of things are going to set you apart as different. And so, and a lot of times that's the same with a mentorship. You could find a mentor, you know, in one of those organizations. And that, what I think is what's going to kind of separate you from the pack, because, you know, again, a lot of people are applying. Yeah.
Thank you, Judge.
We have this question from the parents. So are there any recommendations for low LSAT scores or standardized test takers?
I'd say that, oh yeah, I am admitting. I'd say that low LSAT scores is only one factor of a whole law school application. There are a lot of other things that college admissions look at. So if you do happen to have an LSAT scores on the lower end, you can always supplement with strong letters of recommendation. If you've been very actively involved in the community, that also benefits your application. So I know it tends to be the focus of our law school applications, the LSAT score, but from personal experience, there's a lot more that goes into it. So I would not let that stress me out or discourage me from applying to law school. There's a lot of other things that you can always put in your application that can make you stand out. And that LSAT score is just one small factor of the whole process and application process.
I would also add that there are lots of resources online to help you with the LSAT. If you know where your weakness is with the LSAT, like lots of people have problems with different parts of the LSAT because it's so different from some of the other standardized tests that you take. So if you can figure out where you're maybe not doing quite as well, there are lots of places online that will give you even free sections that you can just take over and over again to see if you can just get more comfortable with it.
I would offer to also keep in mind that you can take it more than one time. So if you took it and your scores were low, please take Judy's advice and then go back and take it again, see if you can improve your score.
And that might seem costly, but the LSAC does provide waivers for the LSAT. So make sure that your students are applying for any waivers. And if there's not one that's easily identifiable, just reach out to someone and ask them if there's any way to waive the fee. And in addition to those study materials, something I used was flashcards. So I just went to Barnes and Nobles and I picked up an exam prep book as well as flashcards, because the logic games can be very complicated and they make no sense. But once you get down the pattern of how those questions are asked with flashcards, then you've seen one, you've seen all.
That is such a good point, Iman, because that is one of those things that if you have never seen those before, learning how to do them it really takes some time, but once you figure it out, you've got it and you can solve all of them.
Thank you both. What type of degree do I need to get into law school?
So I would say don't pick a degree because you think it's going to be something that gets you into law school. My law school class was full of people who had all kinds of different degrees. There were people who had been doctors, like actual medical doctors in my law school class, and had biology and chemistry degrees. There were people like me who were history or journalism or English majors. There were lots of political science and business majors. There was even a guy who was a voice music major and was an opera singer before he went to law school. So you can major in anything and go to law school.
I agree with Judy's point. I think there is so much flexibility in the kind of degree that you pursue in your college career that there is no limitation when you go to law school. And sometimes the degree that you pursue in college can help shape what kind of law you want to practice. I know of many people that did engineering degrees in college. Now they're patent attorneys. They were able to get that passion translated into their legal career. So just my advice is just to explore whatever interests you have in college and know that you can get to law school with whatever degree you may have.
Thank you both. Does the school I attend affect my chances of getting into law school?
I would say no. I think it's more about the application you put forward. There might be different law schools that interest you for different things. I personally started in South Carolina. That's where I started my law school career, and then transferred to UNC because they had a stronger international law program, which I was very interested in. So I think it's just being able to track down what legal, what part of the law you would like to explore and learn about, and then that would more impact your decision than the college you went to.
Thank you. Are there any skills that help you do better in law school? Are there any classes you would recommend in preparation while in undergrad?
Writing, like anything where you practice reading and writing, because you're going to have to read an extensive, like unrealistic amount of information and then be able to comprehend it and then translate it to writing. So I think that's the best thing you can do to practice. Someone else, one of our other panelists mentioned engineering. I was really surprised to see that my classmates that had engineering backgrounds were really great legal writers.
Wow.
And that's just because I think it was, putting a formula together, and they just kind of, instead of using a lot of flowery, fun language, that people with like an English major might use. Our engineering students were really direct. They were able to, again, comprehend the information, put it into a formula to give an answer. So if you have a science or math background, I think that, could also work and really, really benefit you.
Thank you, Judge. What type of social involvement should I have before applying to law school?
I hate to take two in a row, but I'm really passionate on this one.
Okay, go for it.
Volunteering is so important. And again, like just as like, discovering your interest in your major, because the law intersects with every area of our life and really impacts people that need help. That's where you're going to find your passion and interest. So, if you're, I strongly encourage that, both to, as my point, to, help your application stand out, but also to find something that you're passionate about, because there's so many social justice issues, whether it's poverty or race or gender issues. It's everything possible that we need great and passionate lawyers advocating. So I strongly encourage that that's a primary part of your path to law school.
Thank you. How mindful do you have to be of social media?
So I'll take that one and say you do need to be mindful of it, especially during the application process. If schools are thinking about letting you in, they are going to Google you. They're going to look at your social media accounts. So you might want to take a step back and have your student think about putting themselves in the shoes of somebody who's going to admit them to their law school. What would they be looking at on their social media? Maybe you want to change your settings and go private during the application period so that they can't get into, Facebook, Instagram, whatever they've got out there at the time. But I will say also that schools know everybody uses social media. There are people who have hit the media because they've said something on social media that maybe they shouldn't have, and they become infamous for a short period of time, and they still get into school. So it's not the end of the world, but you do want to be mindful of it.
Thank you. Anyone else on social media? What is required for a complete law school application? How do you prepare for the LSAT?
So for the complete law school application, it hasn't been that long, but my memory might be a little fuzzy. I recall I had to complete the application, get 2 or 3 letters of recommendation. I think at least one would have to be from a professor or like an academic letter of recommendation. I think if it's been a few years since you finish your college degree, you can just get another professional letter, but I would double check with the school you're applying for. There is a it's like one portal for the LSAC, the law school admissions council hosts, where you manage all of your applications through. You submit through that portal to the different schools you're interested in. And besides your LSAT score, letter of recommendation, the application, you may have to have a supplemental application for each individual school. So there might be additional questions, additional essays you have to complete for the different schools you're interested in. It is a time-consuming process. I'd say that I definitely had to dedicate a lot of time to making sure I had all the components necessary. But if you plan ahead, I think you should be able to manage that much workload. And then, Judge, the other question was about preparing for the LSAT.
Yes, preparation. And I know we touched on it just a little bit and you gave some great advice, but if there's anything else you want to say on that topic, please do.
I would definitely say just make the time at least 1 or 2 hours a day. When I was studying for the LSAT, I was working full time, so I could only study for it after my my day job. But a little bit goes a long way. So I think if you start just familiarizing yourself with the content at first and then doing one section at a time, that makes you feel more comfortable. What tends to be intimidating about the LSAT is just the way that, like Iman mentioned, the way the the questions are written, just the sheer volume of questions sometimes, the more you familiarize yourself with it, I think that more manageable it can be when you actually take it.
Thank you. I would
And
like
I,
to offer something about the law school applications. Just like she said, it does take a whole lot of time. I would recommend not waiting till the last minute or when that school's application deadline is. You want to keep in mind that they do start to fill slots. And it would be a shame if maybe you met the criteria, but because you were the last one and they had already selected their students, you didn't get an opportunity to go to that school. So the earlier, the better.
And to the LSAT point too, I'd say make sure that your students are setting themselves up in a real life LSAT environment. So make them take it under the same time parameters that the actual LSAT would be, and have them in a room that would be like a test taking room, and you can be their proctor. So they get used to answering those questions in the required time constraints of the actual test.
Thank you. All right, the next question is, how important are undergrad GPAs? We talked about this just a little bit, but if anyone would like to add more, please go ahead and do so.
Different schools weigh things differently. And if I recall, where I went, they weighed the GPA a lot higher than the LSAT. Yeah, so it kind of depends, and that's it's something you might want to ask around, and again, have a very well-rounded application, because if that's something you're lacking in, you might want to really push the letters of recommendation and the volunteer work that you might have.
And
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that you can look up online sort of the range of GPAs and LSAT scores that the schools that you're interested in take, so that you can kind of see where you're falling. And like Judge said, if you are maybe on the lower end of the GPA, really focus on your personal statement and your letters of recommendation.
Thank you. And finally, what are the steps of admission? Anybody want to add anything more? Because we've talked about several things.
I like to just quickly, I think it wasn't my experience, but I think some schools, they do have an interview process when it comes to law school admission. I never had that, so I'm not sure how that would work. But my understanding is that after you submit your application, some schools invite you to their campus, or they may be able to do like a virtual interview nowadays, where they just want to get to know you a little bit more in person prior to their admission decision. That's the only thing I don't think we've touched on just yet.
Thank you for bringing that up. And yes, I had an interview when I went to school, so I appreciate you saying that.
And to prepare your students for interviews, again, you might want to do some mock interviews with them so that you can hear the type of answers that they're giving and try to coach them on a better answer. And just so they can get comfortable with answering questions before they're actually before the admissions representatives at the schools.
Thank you, Iman. All right, now we're going to talk about paying for law school. How did you pay for law school?
So I'll go first. I paid for law school a combination of ways. I had a partial scholarship. I had a lot of loans, both federal government loans and private loans. And then I worked both summers between my first and second year and my second and third year. And I had 2 jobs that I worked my second and third year of law school.
Thank you.
Like Judy, I took out loans. I have to start repaying them soon. I also worked my first and second summer of law school. And then I worked during law school too, just to kind of help cover the cost. I did not apply for scholarships early enough. So I would emphasize that with law school, everything, the earlier you can get things done, the better, the more options you may have available. But the loan process, it's not as complicated as I thought it would be. It just takes the time to navigate all your financial options. I would definitely keep that in the top, at least one of the top priorities of your list, just to make sure you look at all the different scholarships there are a lot of scholarships out there. You just kind of have to go look for them, and don't be like me and wait till the last minute.
I went to the least expensive law school I got into because I knew I was going to work in public interest. There's some benefits to public interest, and that your loans can be forgiven after 10 years of service. And that's primarily what I use now. The negative to that is when you're in that path, the jobs that are offered, for law students in public interest are often unpaid. So it's kind of a balance, but there are opportunities, again, scholarships and grants. I had a grant going into law school, a grant coming out of law school. So things are available. You just, again, have to continue to seek and search for those opportunities.
I
we
would
have a
like to
question.
raise that federal and private loans are very different, especially for the program that Judge Marvel was just mentioning, where you can have your loans forgiven after 10 years of public service if it's a federal loan, not a private loan. So you all may have recently seen over the last 2 years, our president saying that he was going to make a special exception and include some private loans, but that cutoff date has passed. That is no more. And it was only for that short period of time. So if you're interested in the 10-year forgiveness, make sure that you do a federal loan and not private.
And on top of that, some states and schools offer assistance with paying back your loans. So UNC has an LRAP assistance program to help you pay back your loan. In North Carolina overall, if you're in the public interest sector or government sector, they have a program called NC Leaf where they provide up to $400 in financial assistance for you to make your payments on your loans. And there's a question from a parent, but I'll add too, I did work study in law school. So I worked at the library and that helped me get additional money while I was there. Very low stress. I sat there and watched Netflix or did my homework for class the next day. So that's a way that students can make some money. But when it comes to the bar exam, there's also opportunities for that to be paid for the students as well. So some of the bar prep courses will allow for your students to be a representative for them, and that can give them a discounted rate for the bar, or you can get the bar completely free. And that's all I'll say before I'll ask the question from the parent, which is part-time work and part-time study doable as a 1L or 2L?
I'll take this one.
Okay.
As a 1L, I think I was told that the focus should just be to adjust to law school and make sure your grades are good in your first year. First year grades are very important in law school, especially as you begin applying for jobs on your second year. I did not work my first semester of my 1L year. I did work my second semester. I was able to manage, but I wouldn't recommend it. I think it's just best to focus on your 1L studies, making sure you understand how the law school experience works. You will be reading a lot. You'll be asked to do a lot of writing for different classes. It is a little heavy work at first, and just that adjustment takes time. I think during your second year, you have a little bit more flexibility in picking your classes and kind of figuring out your schedule, and you may be able to incorporate work time into your second year. But for your first year, I definitely recommend just focusing on the grades and adjusting to law school.
I completely agree. Law school was so different from anything I had ever done before. That first year was just like almost like learning a completely new language that you had to be able to read and write and think in. So if you can swing it, that was the only year I didn't work, and I'm really glad I didn't, because those grades were so important setting you up for your fall of your second year in law school is when most people apply for the jobs that they're going to get coming out of law school, especially if you want to work at a law firm.
Thank you. For any parents who aren't aware, one of the reasons that everyone is saying how critical those first year grades are, the grading scale at a lot of law schools is much different than when you went to high school or when you went to college. Some grading scales are designed to cut the least performing So maybe that could be 8% or 10% of students, whoever's, performed the least with grades, um, don't get the opportunity to continue in law school. And so it really is that critical and that crucial. And so I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention, that the grading scale is quite different and something to be aware of and mindful of. All right. So are there any programs to help you pay off your loans once you graduate? We did talk about the 10-year forgiveness program. And I think someone mentioned a program at UNC. Are there any other ones that anyone would like to recommend or that you're aware of?
Yeah, I know some law firms, they offer kind of diversity scholarships or other kinds of scholarships for law school students. They are very competitive, and I don't know off the top of my head which law firms offer those scholarships, but some of them tend to be sizable amounts, like $15,000, $10,000, and that may help with those costs for law school.
Thank you. We have 2 minutes left, and now is the opportunity for anything else that anyone would like to raise, any questions any parents have. You can feel free to just unmute. Any panelists want to give any final thoughts? Now is the opportunity.
Well, I guess I'll give a final thought. Maybe we can all go around. We have been talking about law school. Law school is really expensive. It is really, really expensive. There is no way around that. But at the same time, I sort of think it's like one of the best decisions I ever made. I loved law school. I honestly did. I loved it more than undergrad. The people I met there were absolutely fascinating. The classes I took were really interesting. And here I am still all these years later as a practicing lawyer. So do your research, have your student do their research, and don't be intimidated by the costs, but look at them realistically.
Thank you, Judy. I have to admit, I had a very different experience than Judy. I hated law school. It was one of the most difficult things or periods of my life. But I do love my work now. So it was still worth it to go. So if your student is saying what I'm saying, don't be discouraged. There's hope on the other side.
And I'll just add, real life happens while you're in law school, and it continues to happen. And what I said earlier about forming relationships with professors reigns true in law school. I had a lot of issues my first year personally, and because I made those connections, my professors had my back and they were willing to offer me support. And it's just very stressful when you come from a low income background. So I did end up having to work 2 jobs the summer after my first year because it was like basically forbidden to work during your 1L year. Just to pay my bills. So just make sure you're supporting your students and encouraging them along the way, because it can be very stressful and cumbersome, and just also encourage them to force their professors to be their mentors. Because I did that. I would go to office hours and be like, I don't know if you know this yet, but I'm telling you today, you're officially my mentor and I need your help. And that helped me get a lot of jobs along the way. And they will connect your students with attorneys that they know in the field to help them get opportunities, even if their grades may not be where they need to be.